Welcome to Disruptive Successor, a show for next generation leaders in family businesses and entrepreneurs who want to disrupt the status quo and take their existing business to a whole new level. We all know that what got us here isn't going to get us there. This show will provide inspiration, advice, and resources to help you create massive impact. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Hi, it's Jonathan Goldhill, and welcome back to another episode of the Disruptive Successor Show. Today, we're going to be talking about operations management and the importance of getting it right. My guest today is Jon Bassford. He's a visionary entrepreneur and operations professional who thrives on creating and driving change. As the founder and CEO of Lateral Solutions, an operations management company specializing in launching and managing internal operations for startups, small businesses, and nonprofits, Jon has established himself as a leader in his field. We'll be talking about creating efficiencies, launching operations, moving beyond doing it yourself, being a leader of curiosity, and creating a culture of results. Jon, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's start, as I usually do, with a little bit of background about, who you are and how you got to, do what you're doing today, and your why, maybe.
Sure. So my background's a little interesting. I went to law school after undergrad, left law school, not sure really what I wanted to do with my law degree. And I fell into working for a legal organization. I was a member of law school. It may sound like a kind of far away from what I do today, but I started my career in association management in the membership and volunteer management program side of the house, but eventually grew into the operations side, the accounting, HR, legal, risk management, governance, et cetera. And my second role in association management was actually working for a tech trade association that was a startup that worked with startups. Mm-hmm. So really kind of where this operational career began, where my work with startups and really, even though it's in the association space, it really operates much more like a small business itself, but also works with these startups and small businesses too. And so from there, after a couple other roles, I launched my consulting company, where I launched operations for a few startups or transitioning companies or organizations, and then stayed on as a fractional COO.
Yeah, sounds good. Association management is something that I was marginally involved in. Was yours a nonprofit?
Yep. So I work for everything from 501c3s all the way up to C7s.
Okay, so I've worked for C3, C4, and C6s, and so I understand them and coach them. And had one of my early coaching clients was an executive manager, the executive director of an association. And so, sometimes people think that associations and nonprofit organizations are completely different than businesses. But you and I both know, as I'm sure you're shaking your head, that we very much have to run them like a business. It's just that they don't probably have a sustainable business model. And so they need to rely on support from either sponsors or underwriters or philanthropic organizations or government entities. And so, but we learn some of the same things that are needed in those organizations, and so important. And so today, you work with a lot of small businesses, right? And you see these small businesses, and one of the things that you and I talked about is there's a tendency for small businesses, and I think even a bigger tendency with family businesses that are small is to do it yourself. And you call it the DIY dilemma. What is that exactly?
Sure. When we're a startup or a small business, and again, like you said, family businesses, I think are tend to face this a lot as well. But we're short on resources. When you have a small business, the net income that your business generates goes directly to your bottom line as an individual and as a family, right? So your business's resources and the limit therein affects your personal life, right? And be able to feed your family and pay for your mortgage and this and that. So, the concept is, that the more I do myself, the more money there is going to be for my business and my family. And so if I just keep it all internally and have control over it, I also have this concept that I will do a better job than anybody else, right? That's another key
Right.
piece of it. I think that resource management piece is probably the one that causes it the most.
And so the dilemma is that it's cheaper and maybe easier and faster to do it by yourself, but that you can't scale. If you're going to do everything by yourself or, for yourself, then how do you train people to do things that are valuable and some things that are repeatable that can allow you to step out of the daily, step out of the kitchen, so to speak, and meet with the customers or step out of just being customer facing and deal with operations, whatever it is. But now you've made a living focusing on the operations side of businesses. And to that, I think a lot of business owners don't necessarily even relate to the term operations. That's almost like an abstract, like that's something we'd study in business school. So in your world, what do you mean by operations?
Sure. Certainly, when you're in different industries, operations can mean certain things. For example, I have a colleague of mine who works for a conservation district, and their operations people are the people who are out mowing fields, building fences, taking care of property, right? But
Right.
that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those internal operation functions where you're overseeing your HR, your accounting, your legal, your risk management, your insurance, all those pieces that you need to be a functioning business and make sure you're compliant and running smoothly. But then also those cross-departmental functions, right? Someone's got to be there in the middle to connect all the dots and make sure everything is running efficiently and effectively. And that's the combination of those is what I mean by operations.
Do you start with helping people understand and break down the operations by helping them to interpret, so what are the different operations in your business that you need to pay attention to, and that you may not be paying attention to?
Sure. Yeah. And I like to point out first and foremost the fact that, if you don't set up your operations right in the beginning, you're going to spend two or three times as much time and money redoing it. It's a lot easier for operations to launch a system or process fresh from the start than changing a system or process or platform, right?
Yeah.
So that's the one key part there. The other aspect, let me give you a great example.
But you must see low compliance in that area. Most people don't do it right from the start, do they?
Very, very few have right. with their operations, 100%.
Right.
And there's a recent thing that's happened in business. I like to throw as an example for why operations are important. If you follow the stock market and corporate news at all, you will learn that Fisker is having the auto company, the electric car company is having some problems.
Yes.
What we've learned over the last couple of months after learning about their financial problems is that they literally were shipping vehicles to people without collecting the money.
Wow.
So we're not talking about a T-shirt or a book.
We're talking about $100,000. Yeah. 50, 100. Yeah.
Now, how can that happen? Right. The only way that can happen is if you have a breakdown in your systems and processes in operations. Right? The contracting part, the sales piece, the invoicing, the shipping, right? Those are all operational components. And one shouldn't happen until the next one's done, right? That there should be a process, a procedure that's followed.
Correct.
Operations is important, right? You want to make sure that your accounting, your finances are up to date. That affects your ability to bring in money, how quickly you can do so. keeping the costs down as you do that, as well as looking at your personnel, making sure your business is protected through insurance. All these functions are necessary to have a not just a sustainable business, but one that can grow.
Right. And so one of what I have found helpful with clients in situations like that is to get up on a whiteboard and actually flow chart out from the moment you make contact all the way through contract and collection, and flow that cycle out and look at all the different people and pieces or parts that come into play in that situation, and map it out and figure out where are the bottlenecks, the constraints, who's the champion of this particular process, because it moves right from sales to production, maybe, or production to sales, and then it moves into customer service, and then it moves into accounting. So it goes through different places. Now, I know you use different types of assessments that you perform, including a full audit. Tell us a little bit about what that looks like
Sure.
when you go into a client.
Yeah. So when I'm working with a new client, a lot of my clients, most of them know something's not right operationally, but they don't know what it is, right? Because it's not their wheelhouse. And so what we can come in and do is do a full audit of their operations. And we actually start with, the business identity.
Mm-hmm.
The owner, the management group of that company, is your vision of that company in the decision-making process, is that aligned?
Mm-hmm.
That's critical, right? If you want to make the right decisions and be strategic about how you do things, you want to make sure that you're aligned in where your company is going. Obviously, with that, you got to have a capacity for change. So we're going to actually audit that as well. Do you and your staff have the capacity for change? Then from there, we go a little deeper. Then we do a operational maturity audit where we're looking at 47 different areas of your business, from marketing and sales to HR and accounting, and where you are in that moment. It's not aspirational. It's helping to identify where you are in that moment, but then we'll provide the roadmap of areas that you need to improve so you can grow. And then the last piece of that is operational efficiency and compliance. That's where we're digging into those HR pieces, those accounting pieces, not to just make sure they're mature, but you're doing this in a very efficient way, and it's being compliant to make sure that you're not missing anything, and you're having that grasp of risk management.
And there's an overlap of the people and the processes. So I imagine you're looking at, do we have the right people in the right seats, doing the right things, and as I like to add on, doing them right.
Right.
So the doing the right things being effective, meaning effective, and doing them right, meaning doing them efficiently. And those are two words I find people mix up a lot, which probably is a conversation point for an operational guy. Well, right? Does that make sense to you? The effective versus efficiency concept?
Yeah, 100%, right? And going back to the DIY dilemma, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that a lot of owners want to do is control the process procedures of their employees.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's done from a good place, right? Like this is
Right.
this is how we do it. I want to make sure you're doing that. But then there becomes a piece where, as you bring new people in and they're touching your business from different areas, they have a different perspective, right? They have a different idea. And so when you tell people exactly what to do and how to do it, you may get the end result, but you're not leaving open that opportunity for feedback to say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, look, if we cut this step out, or
Right.
if we channel this, we can get the same result, but in half the steps. And that's why you mentioned the curious leader, right? That's where that comes into play as well, is, being able to create a culture and an atmosphere so that you can allow ideas to flow and be looking for ways to improve every aspect of your business every single day.
Well, this is not only important in any business, but in a family business, I find that sometimes the matriarch or patriarch who is running the business currently has difficulty with accepting that the next generation of leader might push them towards being more curious. And they think that maybe the next generation of leader maybe has ideas, but that they're either expensive to implement or they might be challenging to the current generation because they might require a new way of doing things, a way of that might require them to let go of the way things are being done currently. I mean, a really hard-hitting example is where a next generation leader decides that we need to put in a full implementation of an enterprise resource planning or customer relationship management system. And that's different than the way the current generation is running the business through, maybe they're used to running it through relationships or just running it through their gut feel. And now suddenly they're looking at reports and trying to analyze data, trying to input and understand information from software. This is a big challenge. And operationally, you must hit yourself up, hit your head up against people, whether they're matriarchs, patriarchs, and family businesses or just owners of small businesses, medium-sized businesses, that this, change is challenging and difficult to embrace unless there's a hunger and, and a pain.
Right.
What's your experience here?
Yeah, I would say a lot of small businesses, when I'm talking with businesses, I'm looking to work with growth companies, as are you, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's one thing I tend to come across most with family businesses is, oh, we've been doing the same thing for 20 years. We're just fine where that is.
Mm-hmm.
And we started this conversation talking about association management, and I talk a lot about culture and change with those organizations because they have history. They have volunteers and board members who have dedicated years to these organizations, and they love it the way it exists now. That's exactly the same way with the patriarch or matriarch of that family business. They love what they built. They built it with their bare hands, and they love where it is now. And that's why that same thing with associations, that's why it's hard for them to give up that control that you mentioned. But you said so much of growing a business is about change. One of the biggest areas that generations fight against is adopting technology, right? Because they don't want to learn it. They did without that. But as times change, right, you need to let go and let that younger generation be curious about what ways they can take what you've done, go beyond that. And that's really what legacy is about, right? Is letting someone take what you have done and make it even bigger and stronger.
Yeah. And legacy, sometimes that's not even a word that's part of their vocabulary. It's part of the consultants or advisors' vocabulary. And maybe if it's a multi-generational business, then it's definitely part of the vocabulary, but it might not be part of their thinking. And yet it's so important that it is. So, on a personal note, the operations side of a business is arguably the most difficult to outsource. And yet you've built your business from providing outsourced operational support. I know many years ago, I thought of when I first ran into people who are CFOs for rent, CFOs for hire, part-time, fractional CFOs, I thought, that's what I want to be, but I want to be a part-time fractional COO. And yet it didn't make sense to me that someone could farm out the guts of their business, so to speak. I understood accounting, HR, even sales. All of those could be somewhat fractional, part-time, 1099. Didn't seem like the operations seemed like you had to be there. You had to understand the business. You had to understand the industry. But yet you've made a living in a business out of being a fractional COO. Explain what was I missing in my thinking back then, or what's changed in the world that people are open to this?
Yeah, well, I think one thing that has changed is just the ability to do everything remote.
Yes.
Majority, I forget the stat now, I should look it up, but something like 60% of most small businesses work entirely remote. There's no physical place, right? There might be an office you go to, kind of co-working space type thing, but there's no storefront, there's no this or that. So that's opened a lot. I mean, my company, we work nationwide and we set up things nationwide because we exist in the cloud for everything we do.
Right.
So that's the first thing that has changed. The other thing is, the gig economy just continues to grow. And I agree with you that the internal operations piece hasn't been as quickly adopted for that gig economy. And I think there's a couple reasons. One is it's not the sexy part of a business to invest in. It's harder to see that through line of if I invest $10 here, I will get $20 back because it's about efficiency, it's about time, it's about
Hmm.
resources, it's about compliance, right? It's not the sexy part of investing in your business. So I think that is always the hurdle to get people to do that. And usually what happens is, the owner or the CEO will outsource the sales and the marketing and all that stuff, bring in people to help them with that and not the internal operations. And what happens is they get sucked into it and they get trapped there. And that's really the reason why you need to be outsourcing or at least bringing some support for that. Because, I mean, the old adage of working on your business, not in your business, when you get stuck in the operations, you're working in your business, not on it. And you need to be able to come out of that and focus on growth, scaling, strategy, and not be stuck in that administrative operational minutia. So what I've done, which is not widely seen in the industry, is kind of brought forth that jack of all trades knowledge,
Hmm.
where I have the knowledge in accounting, HR, et cetera. So all those internal functions are connected through me in operating as a fractional CLO. Where the alternative is, if you're not going to put your own time in there, is what they tend to do is say, I'm going to have my accountant do this, my bookkeeper do this, my HR person do this, my insurance broker do this, and there's no one there that's going to connect the glue together. Again, unless you get drawn into it. So that operational person can really connect all the dots and keep the glue together.
So I want to dive a little deeper. But first, I want to back up and tell a story that I remember. It was 1999, and I left a company, an economic development company I'd been running for 10 years. And I was kind of arguably the COO, was the number two person, as I've been in other companies before, small businesses. It was 1999, I jumped into an internet company. And I joined this company as the chief operating officer. And it was the most unusual thing. I was sitting in this office in Santa Monica in a couple of three small rooms with 15 people, not just a few feet from each other. And the office was the quietest office I've ever experienced. There were no doors, there were no like walls, and everyone was click clacking on their keyboards. And they were ICQing or AOL instant messaging each other. And I'm like, you're sitting right next to each other. Like, this doesn't make any sense. So here I am, the COO of a company that everyone's physically there, but it was a digital media marketing business, and everyone could have easily been anywhere in the globe in real time, like organizing these events. Okay. So it makes sense to me that a fractional COO could be of a tech company or a software as a service company, which is a tech company, could be remote because everything is being done in the cloud. But when you're running a manufacturing business and you're making something, a product, and or you're distributing something and you have a warehouse and you've got customer service people right there. Or another example is a service business where it's maybe a construction type of service where there's physical materials and people. It seems that the operations person needs to physically be in the manufacturing or in the warehouse or the factory versus the company that's doing everything cloud-based. So is there that, let's call it a digital divide between the world of physical assets and physical delivery of goods and services versus that of intangible where it's all up in the cloud?
Yeah. I think there absolutely is. And there are certainly some industries that absolutely require some element of in-person.
Hmm.
I also think you can divide the internal operations, meaning those HR accounting pieces, et cetera,
Right.
apart from the business operations, which
Yes.
is retail and manufacturing. So I think you can still have this pool over here that's remote, but at some point, yes, you have to have someone who is going in and seeing what's working, what's not working, understanding the process, understanding the procedures, and being those eyes and ears to make sure everything is running smoothly. Absolutely. Like you said, manufacturing and retail are probably the two areas
Yep.
where I think the most. But when you go to some other areas that are often family businesses, like plumbing,
Hmm.
electrical, the trades areas, the construction area,
Right.
so much of that is the work is done in person, but remotely as well. You're going
Gotcha.
from client to client, right? So
Right.
again, that all that information is coming back to somewhere anyways.
Right.
So again, that's some other areas where although the work is done in person, that hub it comes back to, the inter-operations piece where it comes back to, that could be remote for the most part because it has to come back to somewhere anyways.
Right.
And so you set up the systems where that information channels correctly.
That makes sense. And so if you're process mapping this for a client, do you find that those clients of a plumbing or an HVAC shop can get on a Zoom call and you can process map this and they can see and feel how things need to change and it doesn't need to be done in front of them as a group?
Yeah. So I mean, I think to make that work, a couple elements.
Hmm.
One is you got to have buy-in from the leadership that
Right.
everything is transparent.
Right.
That is paramount, right? The first step, because whether you're there in person or you're talking to them on the phone or doing a Zoom, if there isn't that layer of transparency that's laid down to say, hey, look, we're here to improve. Everything is on the table. Be honest, be open. If you don't have that type of culture already laid out for this, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
For the most part, people can walk you through what they do. Sometimes does it help to be there in the passenger seat as they're driving from client to client to see how they do things? Sure. But for the most part, they can walk you through what it is they're doing on a day-to-day basis and really do that from a phone call or a Zoom call. Absolutely.
That makes sense. So eventually, I imagine you're putting yourself out of a job or out of a consulting job, and you're hiring someone that moves from being fractional to being full time. What are you looking for in a person? For a company that's thinking about bringing in either a fractional or a full time operational person, what's the mindset? Maybe what's the ideal profile type? You know, what are the things that you look for? Because I know you do some of this as placement work.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things. One, well, let me give a caveat first, which
Hmm.
is a lot of owners, they'll have in their head some ideal traits that they think is perfect, right?
Hmm.
Maybe the company's adopted EOS, and
Hmm.
they gravitate like this person has had to have adopted EOS.
Hmm.
Now, I have talked before about EOS is a framework, right? It's a framework of things that you and I have done a dozen different times in different ways for different businesses.
Right.
So I do encourage people to step out of what's in your head of what you think you need and be open to listening.
Hmm.
Obviously, with the operations role, there are some tangible, hard skills that need to be known. If they're
Hmm.
overseeing accounting, they got to know how to do accounting. If they're overseeing HR, they got to know some HR principles. But what I look for more than anything are a couple soft skills. One is they have to be problem solving.
Right.
It is impossible in any operations role to know every single thing about everything. So you have to be able to solve problems. And one of the ways you have to be able to do that is resource management. And by resource management, I don't mean money. I
Hmm.
mean gathering information that you need to make an informed decision.
Right.
That is critical. You have to be able to ask the right questions, talk to the right people to get the information that you need. Those are two of the biggest things that everyone needs to look for. The other one is, and I think is often overlooked, is having a very honest and transparent person. In an operations role, you have to have someone that you can trust and give them the leeway to do their job, but also trust that there is a problem, they're going to bring it right to you.
Hmm.
That is something that's often missed and something I hammer home to my clients when they're bringing someone on for operations is you got to have that true and solid trust factor that goes both directions in an operations role.
Supposing your company is an engineering firm or an architecture firm or an accounting firm or a plumbing firm or whatever. how much experience and knowledge of architecture, engineering, accounting, plumbing do they have to have? Do you prefer thinking that they were a prior plumber, architect, engineer, accountant, and now they've decided that really they're better off as a business manager than as a technician? Or
Um,
does that not matter? Can you move from industry to industry to industry? You're an operations guy. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of organizing people and utilizing resources.
Maybe one of the best ways to answer that is to look at my career. So
Okay.
again, I work for every kind of nonprofit you can work for.
Mm-hmm.
I also worked for consulting firms,
Mm-hmm.
public affairs firms. I've worked for a education platform on technology, and it's also a technology company itself. It built its platform. So a lot of different companies. I've actually even worked for facilities management companies, retail places, e-commerce.
Mm-hmm.
So I've touched everything, most things under the sun. And so the key is, those core functions of operations, majority of them are industry agnostic.
Right.
Now, again, this is where helps to have someone who's experienced in operations to be able to come in and listen to you and you listen to them to discover, is there something within your industry, within your business that needs someone from that direct experience
Mm-hmm.
the industry? There are times where it is helpful. But majority of operational management, as long as you have someone who is a quick thinker, quick learner, problem solver, and has those few hard skills that are necessary, they can adapt to any industry.
Well, I guess hence the name of your company, Lateral Solutions, because, and actually, I like the email, which is think lateral, John at think-lateral.com, by the way, if you're interested in getting a hold of him. But it's really the lateral thinking is to be able to be a CFO or a COO or a chief marketing officer. If those aspects of the business are highly operational and need to be managed, um, I think that that's what's paramount. And as I'm thinking about, earlier I was thinking about like how important is emotional intelligence here? And while I always think and highly prize emotional intelligence, I think of operations as people who are really good with managing things as opposed to people, even though you need to have both skills. But I think that operational is about moving in the management of things more. I don't know if you agree or disagree, but
Yeah, I think you're right. For me, why I got into operations and why I feel it's a fit for me is something you mentioned earlier about that curious leader, right?
mm-hmm,
It's that my brain naturally works to figure out, all right, what is the quickest and easiest way I can get something done?
mm-hmm,
Result. When I was taking the metro in DC down to work, when I worked in an office,
mm-hmm,
with time, I would figure out where to stand on the platform so that when I got off the train, I was right by the escalator. Why I'm standing around doing nothing, waiting for the train, why not position myself so that when I get off, I'm right there, can go to my office quicker?
sure,
Giving me 30 seconds, right? But that's how my brain works.
yeah,
And so having that ability to be able to look at process procedures, think about what's the best way to do this, what's the easiest way to do this, what's
mm-hmm,
the most efficient way to do this, and being able to analyze those and not just analyze them, but then come up with the result or the action needs to be taken to get there. Part of working in operations, as you mentioned, does include the personnel aspect.
mm-hmm,
Personnel intelligence is greatly needed for that because you are constantly changing things. If you are disrupting, if you're innovating, that is constant change. And people have to be led through change. And it's usually that operations person who's responsible for communicating that and understanding the impact it's going to have on people, which is where the emotional intelligence piece comes into play.
gotcha. John, is there, as we wrap up, is there a model of success that you most admire, or a resource, a book, a movie, a video, something that you think is like, this is a game changer. People need to, understand this kind of thinking, or, this is someone I greatly admire.
Uh, so one of the books that is actually not a business book, but more of a kind of mindfulness type book is
Mm-hmm. Is
Letting Go.
which? Letting
Letting
go.
Go.
By
It's
whom?
give me 1 second here. You're gonna put me on the spot with that one.
Okay, sorry about that.
It's all right. No worries. I can look it up while I'm talking here. Um, by David Hawkins.
Okay,
And the concept behind that is for a business to grow, to be disruptive, you got to let go.
right.
In the day, you have to let go control, let other people do their work. You have to some regard, also let go of the results.
Mm-hmm.
There's only so much you can make happen. And letting go is about understanding it's about the work you put into it and letting the results happen.
Mm,
The more that you try to push and make things happen, the more resistance you get back. I mean, it's a law of nature, right?
yep.
Force begets force, right? Equal and opposite reaction.
Yes.
So by letting go, we're allowed to embrace other people, give them the ability to be curious, let them be creative in how they're doing their job, and we stop trying to control everything and just let things happen and put forth the work and then let the results come as they will.
Love it. And thank you for that resource, David Hawkins, Letting Go. It sounds like that could be a mind changer for some people. And I do find that books, more so probably than movies, because people have to exert more effort to learn from a book, and more so even when you read it than when you listen to it. That's just my thinking and my experience, maybe because I'm a more visual person, but that sometimes a book or a thought leader or something can be really a game changer for someone and a mindset changer. I mean, so helpful resource. Any final words on the you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I just think, given the family business structure, I always encourage people to, when you're looking at what's next for our business, when you want to hand this off to someone of the next generation, you got to be open, you got to let go, you got to be open to the changes, you got to be open to new ways of looking at things. Because if you want that business that you created to continue to exist and thrive, you got to let that next generation do things in a way that's going to make them proud, make them excited. Otherwise, you're not going to get their best.
Yeah. Well, I parrot what you just said. I won't parrot what you just said, but in sum, you need to learn to let go and enjoy life and enjoy the fruits of your labor. And realize that by paying attention to the next generation of leaders' capabilities and hunger to grow that business, that you really can learn to let go and enjoy life more. So, and that's the concept of a disruptive successor, is someone who's going to upset the status quo a little bit to make things better. And that's part of my book, which is, driving growth for the next generation of leaders in the family business. And Jon, thanks so much for being on the show today. And folks, you know the drill. If you got some value from this, share it with others in your community, other entrepreneurs, and give us a good rating on your podcast listening application of choice. And stay tuned for future episodes of the show. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Thank you for joining us on the Disruptive Successor Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, review, and share with a friend who would benefit from the message. If you're interested in picking up a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, go to disruptivesuccessor.com.